For those who are able, I invite you to follow along in your bulletin or on the screen. Our first scripture reading this morning is Psalm 78, verses 1 through 4. Give ear, O my people, to my teaching. Incline your ears to the words of my mouth. I will open my mouth in a parable. I will utter dark sayings from of old, things that we have heard and known, that our ancestors have told us. We will not hide them from their children. We will tell to the coming generation the glorious deeds of the Lord and his might and the wonders that he has done. Our second reading comes from the Gospel of Mark, chapter 1, verses 21 through 28. They went to Capernaum, and when the Sabbath came, he entered the synagogue and taught. They were astounded at his teaching, for he taught them as one having authority, and not as the scribes. Just then there was in their synagogue a man with an unclean spirit, and he cried out, "What have you to do with us, Jesus of Nazareth? Have you come to destroy us? I know who you are, the Holy One of God." But Jesus rebuked him, saying, "Be quiet and come out of him." And the unclean spirit, convulsing him and crying with a loud voice, came out of him. They were all amazed, and they kept on asking one another, "What is this? A new teaching with authority. He commands even the unclean spirits, and they obey him." At once his fame began to spread throughout the surrounding region of Galilee. May God bless us with understanding of God's holy word.
Thank you so much, Jeff, for reading, and I'm sorry I'm losing it.
Just now?
Just now, literally speaking. Thank you again, Jeff, for reading. Beginning of August, have you seen the sign back to school yet? Yes, I know. Some kids don't want to talk about it. Some parents don't want to talk about it. Others might be a little relieved. Whatever it is August. And it's not only back to school, but also I am thinking about the teachers who have left an impact in my life. There are some who are wonderful, and some, well, let me tell you a story. First semester, freshman year. Together with my best friend Annette, who I just met a week before in orientation week, we are going to do ancient Greek 5 days a week, starting at 8 o'clock in the morning, because at 8 o'clock in the morning, the revolution is still asleep. So we go, and we know that this will be a tough class. But we are determined. We can do it. We got in early, 7:30, we sat at our desks, and people were coming in. Professor Dr. Hobart comes in and said, "Too many people on the window sills, too many people standing, too many people sitting on the floor. This is a tough class. You can either leave now, or I make sure by midterm only a third of you are left. Decide now." That's how he started his class. So Annette and I were determined, we are going to do this. And so a couple of weeks in, we are going to pull an all-nighter for Greek. That's why I still have my Greek grammar book in my bookhouse, just in case. Greek is going to be, we can do this. We can do the grammar, we can do the cases, we can do the endings, we can do all the many, many verbs and all the complicated grammar, and it just does all Greek to us at that point. And so we thought we can do it. And at about 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, after lots of coffee, Annette and I had this brilliant idea. What about, instead of translating from ancient Greek into German, we translate from German into ancient Greek? Wouldn't that be fun? So we did. So we thought it would be even more fun to have a little flowchart conversation to Professor Dr. Hobart. Yeah, we are geeks, I know. At 2 o'clock in the morning. So we did. We thought about each and every ending as best as you could, with having a couple of weeks of old ancient Greek in your pocket. And we had little sentences like, good morning, how are you? Easy sentences. And we were so proud of ourselves. We were so proud, because who else would come up with such an idea? Monday morning, 7:30, Professor Dr. Hobart, we saw him coming up Old University Street in Marburg, up the steps. So here we were, ready to greet him in our ancient Greek. Good morning, Professor Dr. Hobart. How are you today? He interrupted right there. This is a wrong ending. You should have known that. Didn't you pay any attention in class? I don't have any patience with that. I have class to teach at 8 o'clock. You can decide to come or go home. Thank you so much, Professor Dr. Hobart. I still have nightmares about not passing ancient Greek. This is the influence of teachers many, many decades later. Back to School with Jesus is our sermon series for August. And we all know that Jesus was a different teacher and not having any intimidation or fear or nightmares at all. As Jeff was reading to us, Jesus taught with authority, a different kind of authority than our old ancient Greek professor. Back to School with Jesus. So I chose the oldest gospel in the first chapter to see what kind of influence does Jesus have, what is like the way Jesus' teaching class would be for any incoming teachers maybe to follow. If we are reading verse chapter 1, verse 21 to 28. If you were to start with chapter 1, verse 1, and reading up to now, you would have read about John the Baptist. John the Baptist baptizes Jesus. Jesus gathering his first disciples. And now his first public ministry in the synagogue, on the Sabbath, and healing. And in those few verses Jeff read to us, we already know that we have teaching at least twice, and authority is mentioned twice. So I want to know, what does it mean to be a teacher in the New Testament, and what does it mean to have authority? So we read also the Psalm. Even in the Psalms, we read about teaching. So teaching and passing on knowledge from generation to generation, especially faith knowledge, is nothing new. The word teaching appears about 100 times in the New Testament. More than 50 of them, so more than half, in the 4 Gospels. Mark is the shortest Gospel with 16 chapters. In there, Jesus is called teacher about 12 times, and Jesus is teaching the verb more than 20 times. So quite a lot of times if you think about how short and old the gospel is. So it says right here in the text, in today's text, that Jesus is teaching differently than the scribes. What does that mean? Of course, I want to know. The scribes are using more the traditional method. Traditional. Like we have always done it that way, or we have never done it that way. There's 7 famous words for any church to die. So Jesus is differently. Jesus has no diploma hanging on the wall. He didn't go to Ivy League school, and I do not know where the letters of recommendations would be. So where does Jesus get his authority from? Who tells him that he is Jesus, the one who speaks with authority? Jesus speaks with authority because God has given him that authority. He uses words and deeds intertwined. What is important for him in his authority is to also look at the old Greek. Did I tell you about Greek already? At least 3 or 4 times this morning. Because one of the words of authority can be used, one of the ways it can be translated is freedom, to setting somebody free. And we're not only looking at the one in the context, in the historical context, that Jesus set the people free from the Roman Empire, from the Roman oppression and authority, but also from the traditions, from the way past, how it was done over and over and over again, and the limitations people had, because you had a certain role and you were stuck with that. It was very difficult to get out, but also on a personal level, like you saw those rocks, on a personal level of setting free from worries, setting free from doubts, setting free from whatever is going to push you down. So Jesus is setting us free. And Jesus is teaching not multisyllable words and stories, but especially in the parables, he relates to people with everyday issues. We have all read the parables. People can relate. People can get engaged, questions, answers. He takes them seriously. And also, what is so important, for him it is not just about the knowledge, but that all people have equal access to God. And regardless of how many courses you might have taken or not taken, how old you are, what background you're in, that you will actually accept God's love for yourself as well. The communion table is set. In a couple of minutes, we are all invited, regarding of age, to participate in this mystery. Regardless of how many books, how many articles I've either read or written about what is going to happen right here. It is a mystery. And I invite you to have the open hearts and open minds to receive the gift that Jesus talks with authority, meaning with freedom, that you have equal access to God, that there are no other boundaries for you or hoops and loops to jump through. All are invited. All are invited to hear and to taste God's goodness. And I want to share with you one of my authors. As you know, I like to read, so you just have to get used to me. But Diana Butler-Bass, Freeing Jesus, in one of her chapters, she talks about Jesus as the teacher. So I'm paraphrasing some of what she experienced, and I wanted to share that with you. She writes, in July 2016, I was worshiping at a United Methodist Church in Washington, D.C. When the pastor called the little ones forward for the children's sermon, about a dozen preschoolers gathered on the chancel steps. Sounds familiar. The pastor asked, "Where's the candle?" They all pointed to the candle. "Where's the baptism font?" All pointed to the baptism font. "Where is God?" I know, I have seen God," said a little child. "Where?" The pastor said, "You do?" The little child looked excited and said, yes, I'll go get God." The child jumped up and ran down the aisle all the way to the back seat, and his parents, obviously worried about what might happen. Who is that child going to bring, or what does the child think God may be? To fetch that child just at arm's length. But the child was a little bit faster. So the child grabbed Miss Jean in the way back corner and said, "Here is God. Here she is. There she is, God, God, God." This is my Sunday school teacher. She is like God to me. And since then, Diana Butler-Bass writes, "I have wondered if this was how people responded to Jesus. pointing at the beloved teacher, bring them forward, saying, here, here, this is God. We so often forget how beautiful that is until the mystery of it overtakes us all. Thank you so much, Jesus the teacher. I hope that we can all be like that little child on the story. It's a true story. And I also hope that we can have similar experiences of saying, here, here, this is God, the mystery, and bringing that person forward. And when you are going to receive communion, let us be open for it. And let us feel God's love as only God can touch us and as only we can taste God's goodness.